So this is like a small project. It's a series of instructions, silkscreen or napkins, and I dispersed in different libraries. And it was inspired by this novel that I read that is called Faux by James Coetzee. And the book is it's a sort of a sequel to Robinson Crusoe, but in a way that as Coetzee imagine it, but from a different perspective. James Coetzee is South African. So it tells the story of this woman named Susan Barton who is cast away, the same that Robinson Crusoe was. And then she arrives at the island, and then she finds that Robinson Crusoe is half crazy, and his slave, Friday, somebody cut his tongue. So that's where the novel sort of picks up. So all the instructions are related to the tongue, and the series is called Faux. So this one is about how to roll your R's. It's hard to read, but it gives the instructions about how to roll your R's. I was thinking that the physicality and sort of like the materiality of language is also in our mouths. Is the place where it's sort of like made tangible. And I'm interested in this kind of nexus between, or this connection between language and the body, and making sort of direct connections between them, and the performativity of language. So that's like the back of the napkins. So I put them in different books and left them in libraries, or I put them in the cafeterias instead of the napkins that they use. And this one was about how to make the TH sound. What I like about this is sort of like the way that I learn English through like instructions of teaching my tongue how to make certain movements. Like in the first pages of a bilingual dictionary, you would have, how to make, the U sound if it's cup, or if it's cucumber, or if it's, and teaching myself how to make those sounds is how I learned it in a very physical or material way, I guess, and I was interested in that kind of idea of language as well. All the images are of the organs used to make sounds, to make speech. So it was performed as instructions as part of that show that is called Class 2010. And it was a kind of side project of a larger exhibition that it was called Traffic, Conceptual Art in Canada. This one, it's How to Fake an Accent, and it was published as a set of cards. I also used all the napkins as the napkins for that exhibition at the MacLaren. So for the opening, for the food, it was the napkins that went with the show. Oh, I think there were like 2,000 at the end. Yeah. This is another installation. It's called Title Missing. So it's a vinyl text, and then there's 5 silk screens around it. So that's one side of it. That's the other side of it. And there's one more that you can see. So this one was a small text in 12-point font. That's all there is. But when you come close to it, it just says a page left blank intentionally. I don't know if it's the same way here, but they used to tell us in high school, it's like a little story behind that. In high school, that when we were going to make an exam, to be able to focus better, that you would draw a triangle in the corner of your paper. I don't know if it's true. But. So this one, they're all silk screens, and this one is constructed using all the synonyms for the word border. So I like that kind of mutation or slight degradation of meaning that happens with synonyms. And, it starts with border, but it goes into words like boundary, bound, all the way into, when it comes into a circle. And it ends with like walled in and circle, circle. This one was white ink on white paper. So it was, invisible or visible only depending on your position and the light in the gallery. And they're all kind of like minutes of silence to me, like, that minute of silence when something bad happens. They're like really quiet, but really loud maybe at the same time. And this is kind of like the impossibility of a true reference, of an ideal, in this case, white or whiteness. So, see, I'm gonna go into this. This is sort of the new body work that I have started, and like I said, I work thematically. So since last fall, I began working on this body work, and at the end, it would make an installation in the same way that the MacLaren, all these works would turn into an installation. The goal for me is usually to try to understand something, an idea from different positions and different manifestations. So the installation would be, it's called Waiting for the Barbarians, and it's a series of, they're kind of like all small things, an installation made of small things, small photographs, small sculptures, but about big things in a way. What I'm interested in now, or what this body of work is I've been investigating the idea of globalization. And what interested me are the contradictions behind globalization, sort of like the free flow of capital versus, the imposition of borders, or between global markets and national identities, or anxiety and security. And I've been thinking that, capital in a way is sort of like the new cosmopolitan citizen that we were supposed to be. So Realia Series is the series of photographs, and it's the first part of that body of work. So that's just the detail of that one, because it's hard to see from that one. But so it's called quintigesis, which is, I think it's obvious, but it means quintuplets. And I guess I'm thinking here of sort of like the oneness or the sameness of an economic model of exploitation or exportation. Obviously, that company everywhere in Latin America. And globalization, I think about it as imperialism, but through other means, in this case, economic, perhaps. It's another one from the same series. Realia is a really interesting word. On the one hand, is the name given to objects in a library that don't fit an established classification. So like if somebody donates the collection of notebooks from a famous writer, but it comes with pens and maybe a watch or something, so the pen and the watch would be Realia. But it is also used in the realm of education and teaching, and it's the name given to everyday objects when they're used as teaching aids for understanding real life situations. So for this work, there are different levels of meanings for me, or different layers. On the one hand, again, thinking about that kind of anxiety behind security and control, that kind of has a ripple effect in a way that one lock, leads to a bigger lock, and a bigger lock to a door, and a door to a gate, and a gate to a wall, and a wall to a border. So something that protects you can also, lock you in and bind you. And some people have told me that they think it's about personal relationships in a way too. And I wouldn't disagree. I think it's also in there as well. So that's also part of the same series. The idea here for me was to try to think about distance and separation as a three-dimensional object. And on a personal level, I feel, for example, the distance between me and my family, or my language, or my country of origin has become more than a straight line. Like the measure of distance is more like that. So there are small photographs, so like 24 by 14. They're nothing like this size. On this one, the reference on the title is to Hans Hack piece called Condensation Cube. So as a study of globalization, I just want to go back to this. So as a study of globalization, what I'm doing is I'm studying globalization through a series of tropes and motifs. One of them is inflation, the other one is measure of distance, and the other one is circulation. So inflation, for example, in this case or in that case, I think about it not only as a sculptural condition of a stress, material stress and anxiety, but as economic condition of a stress and anxiety as well. So I just wanted to show that real quick. That's Hans Hack piece, which, you probably know it, but, it's a hermetically sealed plexiglass box with water inside. So condensation collects inside the box against the inner surface, depending on the amount of people that visit the gallery and depending on, air conditioning system within the gallery. And this is a time where, museums were becoming more artificial in that sense. So he was thinking about condensation as a way to reflect on the dynamics or the political, economic dynamics behind museums and institutions. So I started thinking that I could use another process for thinking about our time now. So that's how I became interested in that idea of inflation. This would go with the show as well. It's a series of T-shirts. So it's hard to imagine, but obviously my head is really clear, but at the end, there would be this series of sculptures, and then there would be like the shirts hanging and the photographs on one side, and everything would be one thing and called Waiting for the Barbarians, which is also a novel. So this body of work is really about three things. It's about study of globalization, it's about that novel Waiting for the Barbarians, and it's a study of minimalism. Those three things, they're all connect in certain areas and they don't in others. This would go with the show as well. And it's just what it is. It's a series of suitcases that breathe. They have motion sensors like this, so when you approach them, they start breathing. And I often, like I said, I'm really interested in minimalism, and I often draw from their aesthetics and presentation strategies, especially for its concern with performativity and the body. And I'm interested in how minimalism position the object in a physical relationship with the viewer. And I'm interested in exploring the political implications of that relationship. So they're not any kind of suitcases, but they're American tourister suitcases. And I'm very interested in design as well, and I use design, within as part of the work. So the photograph with the locks would be Helping Hand brand of locks. This would be American Tourister. That's a detail from the motion sensor. From this, it's sort of like an action, and it's presented just as the receipts, also part of the same installation. I basically went into an money exchange place, and I exchanged a certain amount of money from one currency to another. So from dollars to pounds to yens. So I ended up with zero at the end, because every time that you exchange, then you lose money. So at the end, I ended up with $1.03. And then just one more thing. This is obviously very much in progress, but it's the other the other main sculpture as part of that installation. And it's sort of like a solid-wood plinth, a solid-wood structure that I'm using as a plinth for 4 different objects. So there will be 4 different objects on different levels. The first one is this sort of artist book that I finished that is called North, South, East, West after Heiser, which is the same sort of actions that he did in the Nevada desert. He excavated this geometrical forms in the Nevada desert. So I did it in the same place that he did it, but on a map. But geographically it's the same place, but on a completely different scale. And the way that I'm thinking about minimalism here is as a kind of platform for staging something. So I'm either staging biographical content or narrative. That's the front cover of the book. And I just wanted to show that because you see those spaces, what I started with, they will be imprinted on every object on that structure, as a kind of design or as a kind of sigil almost, something that the body of work would carry. And it's hard to see, but it is that shape with the name of the body of work, Realia, and then the sign for Ouroboros, which is like a snake eating its own tail. And I am right at 45 minutes. So.